It is a curious truth that you may sit there believing yourself still broken, still wounded, still struggling with the same ancient injuries. Yet all the while, your psyche has been engaged in its silent, invisible labor, reconstructing you from within while your attention was focused elsewhere. I came to understand something many who work with the soul often miss. Healing does not announce itself with fanfare. It does not send a notification declaring you are now mended. No, genuine healing is subtle. It is the psychological equivalent of a tree's growth. You do not witness it occurring, but one day you look up and realize, when did I become so tall? What I wish to convey is this. You have healed more than you suspect. I will describe to you the precise markers of this fact. But understand, this is not a sentimental reassurance. This concerns something far more profound, a process to which I devoted my life study. The process of individuation, the journey from fragmentation toward wholeness, from psychic chaos toward integration. If you follow, I will walk with you through 7 unmistakable signs that this process has been active within you. 7 indications that your psyche has been healing even when your conscious mind believed it was still fractured. For this is the truth. Your consciousness is always the last to know. Let us begin with what is commonly misunderstood. Most imagine healing as a linear progression. You are broken, you do the work, you become better. A straight line from damage to recovery. But this is not how the psyche operates. I understood that the human mind is not a machine to be repaired. It is more akin to an ecosystem, complex, layered, full of processes hidden beneath the surface. Have you not observed how you cannot recall the exact moment a fear left you? You were terrified of something for years, and then one day you simply do it without the old panic. When did the change occur? You cannot pinpoint it. That is what true healing resembles. It is not dramatic. It is not a moment where angels descend. It is quieter, more stealthy. And this is why it matters. If you do not know what healing truly looks like, you will miss it when it happens. You will continue to think yourself broken long after you have mended. I witness this constantly. Individuals who have done years of inner work, who still speak of themselves as working on it, as not yet arrived. Meanwhile, their actual life, their behavior, their relationships show they are entirely different beings from who they were years prior. The evidence is everywhere, but they cannot see it, for they are looking for the wrong signs. That is what we shall address. I will provide a framework for recognizing the markers of deep psychological healing based on how the psyche actually transforms. And I assure you, by the end, you may see yourself differently. You may recognize healing you did not know had occurred. But first, we must comprehend what is meant by healing. Here my perspective diverged. Most approaches share a common assumption. Healing means becoming better, becoming good, becoming an idealized version. To rid oneself of anger, to eliminate selfishness, to become pure. I said that is not healing. That is repression, wearing a spiritual mask. For when you strive to become only good, when you try to eliminate all parts you judge as bad, you do not eradicate them. You merely drive them into what I term the shadow, the unconscious realm where all your rejected elements reside. And the shadow does not sit quietly. It grows. It gains power. Consider the most judgmental persons you know, those perpetually criticizing others. What are they truly doing? They're projecting their own shadow. They see in others what they cannot acknowledge in themselves. Thus, I propose something radical. You do not heal by becoming good. You heal by becoming whole, by integrating everything, light and dark. As I wrote, I'd rather be whole than good. Let that settle. This is not permission for immorality. It is the recognition that every human psyche contains contradictions, contains darkness. True healing emerges from acknowledging all of it, from integrating all of it into conscious awareness. This is what I called individuation, the process of becoming who you actually are rather than who you think you ought to be. This process does not occur overnight. It is a lifelong journey, yet there are markers along the way, signs that indicate you are moving in the right direction. And that is what these 7 signs represent. They are not achievements to be pursued. They are natural byproducts. evidence that your psyche is engaged in its task. Let's examine them. The first sign you have healed more than you realize is this. You can be alone without being lonely. This may sound simple, but attend closely. Most people are terrified of true solitude. Not for an hour, but genuine aloneness. No distractions, just you in your own thoughts. Observe what occurs. Within minutes, your hand reaches for some distraction. Your mind manufactures tasks to avoid being present with itself. I understood this. We fill our lives with noise precisely to avoid confrontation with what lies within. But here is what changes when healing has begun. You can sit with yourself. You can be in that quiet room and feel acceptable at peace. Why? Because you have done what most never do. You have met yourself, the real self. This is shadow work. This is what I meant by making the unconscious conscious. You have looked upon the parts you were taught to conceal, the anger, the jealousy, the petty thoughts. And instead of fleeing, you have acknowledged them. You have said, yes, this too belongs to me. That is integration. That is how the shadow loses its compulsive power. For the parts you reject do not vanish. They go underground. They become autonomous complexes that hijack your behavior when you are unaware. Have you ever exploded over a trivial matter and wondered why? That is a complex activating. But when you have integrated these parts, they cease to control you. They become merely parts of you. And that is when solitude becomes possible. For you are no longer afraid of what you might encounter when alone. You have already met those demons. They are strangers no longer. You become your own companion. If you can sit in a quiet room with yourself and feel at peace, you have healed more than you realize. The second sign is when your old triggers no longer trigger you. Picture this. There was something that once devastated you. A certain criticism, feeling ignored. Whenever it occurred, it would plunge you into emotional chaos. It held complete power. Then something changes subtly. That same situation arises. You feel a twinge, a brief discomfort, but it does not consume you. You notice it, observe it, and move on. What has happened? I would say you have made the unconscious conscious. You have brought the buried wound into the light and processed it. Triggers are psychic landmines. They are buried remnants of unprocessed pain. They remain hidden until something in your present reminds your psyche of that original wound. Then explosion. You are responding to the past. This is why reactions can feel disproportionate. But as you do the work, as you examine these wounds, a shift occurs. The landmines are diffused. The old wounds still exist, but they have been integrated. They have become part of your story rather than unconscious forces controlling it. You can look at them now. You see the connection. You understand the pattern. And in that understanding, the trigger loses most of its power. This is one of the clearest signs that deep healing has occurred, and many miss it. You cease reacting in the old way. Instead of celebrating this growth, you barely notice it. Grant yourself credit for that. When the past loses its teeth, when your triggers cease to trigger you, that is not numbness. That is integration. That is wholeness. The third sign is that you can hold contradictions without losing your mind. Let me ask you, can you love someone and yet be frustrated by them? Can you be grateful for your life while acknowledging its difficulties? If you answer yes, then you have achieved something many struggle with. You can hold paradox. Western culture is uneasy with paradox. We desire things to be one way or the other. We are taught that contradictions must be resolved. But life does not function thus, and the psyche certainly does not. I understood this. I spoke of the transcendent function, the capacity to hold opposing truths simultaneously without collapsing them into a single premature answer. This is psychological maturity. You contain multitudes. You are not one thing. You are kind and selfish, brave and afraid. All these exist within you concurrently. And when you have healed significantly, you can acknowledge this without causing your mind to fracture. You do not need to resolve the contradiction. This connects directly to the shadow. For the shadow is everything you have rejected because it contradicts your ego's ideal. Healing means bringing these rejected parts back. It means admitting you are complex, contradictory, human. And when you can do this, you become more authentic. You are no longer maintaining an exhausting facade of consistency. You can admit, yes, I love my work, and I also resent it at times. Both are true. The rigid need to choose a side begins to soften. This is liberating. I called this the union of opposites. It is a recognition that transformation occurs by holding both poles in creative tension. Light and dark, strength and weakness. You require both. You are both. And when you can accept that, you have achieved something profound. If you find yourself able to hold contradictions that once tore you apart, that is a sign. That is evidence of deep healing. The fourth sign is that the projections of others no longer adhere to you so readily. This is subtle yet powerful. Projection is when you perceive in others what you cannot see in yourself. When a part of your psyche remains unintegrated, you project it outward. But projection operates in both directions. Others are constantly projecting onto you as well. They see in you qualities that belong to their psyche, not yours. And when you have not healed, you absorb these projections. You accept them as truth about yourself. But here is what changes with healing. You develop a degree of immunity to projection. Not complete imperviousness, but a sturdier capacity to recognize when someone is projecting onto you rather than seeing you clearly. Imagine someone becomes defensive at a simple question. In the past, you might have absorbed that, doubting yourself. When you have healed, you can recognize it for what it is. You can think, interesting, that is their interpretation, not my intention. This is substantial. This is what creates healthy boundaries. For boundaries are about knowing where you end and another begins. When you can distinguish between accurate feedback and projection, you have achieved a clarity most never reach. You know yourself well enough to say, no, that is not mine. If you find yourself less affected by the judgments of others, less likely to absorb their projections, that is not coldness. That is healing. That is you knowing yourself. The fifth sign is that your dreams have changed. Some may not recall dreams, and that is acceptable. But for those who do, this is one of the most telling markers. I view dreams as direct communications from the unconscious. When you are in significant distress, dreams reflect that chaos. You may have nightmares, recurring dreams of being chased or trapped. These are your unconscious attempting to process overwhelming material. But as healing progresses, dreams transform. Their quality changes. Nightmares may become less frequent. You may dream of something frightening, but within the dream, you are not helpless. Recurring dreams may shift or resolve entirely. Sometimes healing dreams involve specific imagery, water, journeys, encounters with wise figures. These shifts indicate that your unconscious mind is settling, integrating material that was once overwhelming. Your conscious mind may not register the healing, but your dreams know. If your dream life has shifted even subtly, that is evidence. That is your psyche engaged in its deepest labor while you are not consciously watching. The sixth sign, and this may be the most crucial, is that you have ceased waging war against yourself. You have accepted your wholeness, light and dark. In practice, this appears thus. You can admit things about yourself you once vehemently denied. Yes, I can be selfish. Yes, I feel jealousy. And when you admit these things, you do not spiral into shame. You simply think, yes, that is human. This is what I meant by the gold and the shadow. For the shadow is not merely bad contents. It is also energy, vitality, aspects of yourself that were shoved down because they did not fit your persona. Perhaps your assertiveness or your playfulness was relegated there. And when you do shadow work, something paradoxical occurs. The very qualities you feared become available as resources. The suppressed anger becomes healthy boundary setting. This is integration. And when you accept all of yourself, you become less judgmental of others. For you understand that every human psyche contains darkness. Those who appear most morally superior are still at war with their own shadow. But you have done the work. You have looked upon your shadow and said, this too is me. And in that acceptance, something profound happens. You stop needing to be perfect. You can simply be complicated, fully human. There is a relief in this. If you find yourself able to acknowledge the less admirable parts of yourself without shame, that is significant. That is evidence of deep integration. That is you having made peace with your shadow. The seventh and final sign is that life feels meaningful again. This concerns not what you do, but how you experience what you do. I distinguish between the ego and the self. The ego is your conscious sense of I. The self is the organizing center of your entire psyche. In the first half of life, we focus on ego development. But at some point, often around midlife, ego achievements can begin to feel hollow. This is not a crisis. It is an invitation from the self. When you have engaged with this process, life begins to feel meaningful again, even if nothing external has changed. This meaning may come through creativity, through service, through a sense of connection to something transcendent. Or it may simply be a deepened appreciation for ordinary moments. You become more present, more capable of experiencing beauty. This is what I meant by encountering the numinous. And when you have healed, you become more permeable to these experiences. This does not mean life becomes easy. Suffering does not disappear, but suffering itself assumes a different meaning. It becomes part of the larger pattern of growth. You may begin to notice synchronicity, meaningful coincidences. I propose that when you are in alignment with your own psyche, you notice the meaningful patterns that were always present. This sense of meaning is perhaps the deepest sign that healing has occurred. For you're no longer merely surviving. You're actually living, engaged, connected. If you have felt this shift, even in small ways, that is significant. That is your psyche telling you that you have healed more than you think. So here we are. 7 signs, 7 markers of healing that occur quietly. Let us recapitulate. You can be alone without being lonely. Your old triggers no longer trigger you. You can hold paradox. The projections of others do not readily stick to you. Your dreams have shifted. You have accepted your shadow. Life feels meaningful. Understand this. These are not achievements to be pursued. They are byproducts of the individuation process. They emerge. They unfold. Your psyche possesses its own intelligence, its own drive toward wholeness. I called this the teleological nature of the psyche. It moves toward integration whether you attend to it or not. That is why individuals can heal without realizing it. Your consciousness is always the last to know. Therefore, if you have recognized yourself in any of these signs, pause. Acknowledge it. Grant yourself credit. For here is what befalls most. They heal significantly, yet they never recognize it. They continue to think themselves broken. Do not miss your own transformation. Now, what's to be done? First, cease underestimating yourself. Stop dismissing your growth. Look at where you were. Compare that person to who you are now in internal capacity. If anything has shifted, that is healing. Second, trust the process. Trust your psyche's intelligence. Your task is to remain conscious, to befriend your shadow, to attend to your dreams. The rest occurs naturally. Third, be patient. Healing is not linear. There will be setbacks. This is normal. It does not mean you have failed. Fourth, share this understanding. Help others recognize their own healing. This is how we cultivate a culture that truly comprehends transformation. And fifth, continue. For individuation never concludes. There is no point of completion. You are always in process. The goal is not to finish, but to engage, to live the examined life. My invitation to you is this. Take a moment. Consider which of these signs you have experienced. Acknowledge it. Let it sink into you that you have been healing all this while that your psyche has been engaged in its labor, even when your mind believed you were still broken. You are not as damaged as you think. You are not as distant from wholeness as you believe. You are growing, transforming, becoming. The journey of individuation is about becoming more fully who you actually are, with all your light and all your darkness. That is what healing resembles. Not perfection, but wholeness. The courage to be completely, authentically yourself. And if you are upon that path, if you can perceive even the smallest evidence of these signs, then you're already further along than you think. You have healed more than you realize. That is worth acknowledging.